Thank you so much for introducing me. I'm very nervous right now. But without wasting our time, let's start with this thing. So allow me to share my screen. First of all, thank you, Khaki Labs, for giving me the platform to show my talent, show my research work, and not only mine, but the whole groups. The very special thanks to Bharat, who always encouraged me, Vinayak, who actually gave me full support in trying to find all the books, whatever I wanted from various part of the world. Yeah, I just ordered him and he bought it. Again, thank you to all the families who have contributed to it. For example, Teju Kayas, Goregaonkars, then Malika Khil, Sandeep Daisarkar, Sochpal family. So let's start with this thing. So if we tell more about the Bombay development and the icon, actually we come across this image oftenly. But I just want to ask the audience, if you know this landmark, you might know the architect also, right? You might know the main architect who has designed it, the British one. And we always prefer that Bombay has been brought up or has been built by the British, right? So people might know about F.W. Stevens, but do you know the who is the other architect who has been involved in making of this icon? Anyone? George Whitted.
George
Okay,
Lucas.
no, specifically the BMC building, specifically the BMC building, and about the Indian mostly, not the British one. Mm, I'm just Mazban. No, like take a wild guess. Any Indian who you knew? Malhar Vaidya. Nice. So I will just go ahead with this thing. When I first went inside the BMC building, I was totally amazed. Okay. So there is this kind of a stone which actually tells you more about the person who has built it. There is this F.W. Stevens, which everybody knows, and then there is this Rao Sahib Sitaram Khanderao, who was a member of a society of an architect. I will tell you more. Whenever I do this walks, I always keeps on searching about things or keep on searching about directly on the Google. So when I typed FW Stephens, I saw these great images of FW Stevens everywhere. You can see the images. People have researches about them. It's written about them. Then what I did, I went ahead and I actually typed Khandera Sitaram Vaidya. I got these images. Like there is no kind of a image of Sitaram Vaidya at all. Then Google said, it's not me, it's actually you who has not written about the Indians that oftenly. You have always tried to give all the credits to British. It's not my problem. And then it clicked me, yes, it's very true. He always we keep on thinking the British has made the Bombay, but actually it was not the case because the buildings what we see were actually funded by Indians, might be the Parsis or so, or might be constructed by the Indian architects who is supposed to stay on site and the engineers who might use his brain. So the next question comes here: ki, who is this architect? Well, like the Google don't tell you the story about him. So he is a Sitaram Khanderao Vaidya. He is actually one of the most influential Indian architects who worked in the development of icons, what we recognize as the landmarks of Mumbai. He is associated with the making of icons like a BMC building and the Viti station. Even the Taj, the original plan of the Taj Mahal Palace, to bear his signature with the along with the DN Mirza. He was also the very senior member of Society of Architects. And now, trust me, this is a time where the British was very racist. They were not allowing Indians to come up. There were engineers who were like working with the British for 30, 40 years and they have not been promoted and they have not been published anywhere. And this guy, Sitaram Khanderao Vaidya, goes and becomes like a member of Society of Architects in somewhat around 1875 or something. Now this was like a huge and people don't know about it, so that actually saddened me a lot. Many a times I have come across the PWD letters by the Colonel Fuller to his head, which mentions the immense contribution and expertise to his seniors about the Sitaram Khanderao Vaidya, but still they have not promoted him. And that clicked me. That clicked me to something. So if you see the building, the complex of university, the Rajabhai, where his names are still there. When you see go inside, you will see a stone, and you will see Sitaram Khanderao Vaidya names are still there. Interestingly, this is what we do, like as a contractor of Bombay. Our aim is to aware people about contribution of native or Indians in making a Bombay setting and documenting them. So tomorrow, if you want to search on Google, at least something will pop up regarding the Indian who has contributed to this kind of a research or to this kind of a development. We cannot give everything, like all the credit to British. We have to take something from it. Again, the very small group. First is me. Again, people keep on telling me about Isha. Isha, it's fine for me now. I've already done it. Second is the graphics, which is handled by Dia Mary Joseph. She's going to be soon an architect, very well maintained. Again, the text is given by the Divya. I really want to thank them because everything what we do is like a very small unit. We go online, we talk sometime, and then we keep on making this thing, and everything goes happen like this. So I'm very thankful for them. Coming back to my landmark story, but my quest for the landmark and knowing more about them doesn't end here. It actually starts with a very unusual place. It starts with this area, which is near the central Bombay, or we can say a Grand Road, the area of Kamatipura. So whenever it's like in vibe with me right now, whenever I walk across the street, I always see all the details. I always see which are the older buildings, which are the newer buildings. And interestingly, very interestingly, I found something in this area, and that is these are the older temples. Okay, so if you see the details, this is Pochamma Devi temple in Kamatipura, but when you see in the detail, there is lot of similarity between this icon. For example, the kind of a column and this head of a column resembles something like a Victorian era, or might be from something like a copy version of a column which is there in BMC, or might be the Victoria Terminus building. Even if you see the cartouche of lion is somewhat similar to the cartouche which is there on the on the Victoria Station building. Then the monkeys which are around the cross of a joint gable is almost similar. The arches which you see at the Victoria Station is something very similar to what we see here. But again, I went to Google, I searched, he tell me more about the history of Kamatipura. This is what it shows. So that is actually again saddening me. I'm like thinking, ki, what happens now? Nobody's talking about these temples. Nobody's talking about or writing about this temple. What is wrong here? So yeah, this is what the Kamatipura people shows, the red light area. Everybody like knows Kamatipura by this name, but people don't know what is the rich history behind it. Very recently, I searched again, and then I found this. Now, because of the movie which came across, there was a protest and everything. But yes, this is now what is happening with the history of Kamatipura. Taking you ahead, my answer to all the quests got here. This is one of the oldest temple, Sri Vitthal Rakhumai temple in Kamatipura, where means on a very joint evening, I just went inside and it was raining outside. I was like having too much of baggage with me. And there, the Pandit asked me, who are you? And I introduced him myself, like I'm an architect, like doing some researches here and there. I really like the older version of this temple. So he said, oh, you are from this field. I will ask you, give questions to you. So he asked me, do you know who is the architect of BMC building? I said, yes, FW Stevens, I know about him. And then he said, who is the person who actually built it? So I said, that I don't know. So he pointed me at this photo in the interior of a temple. He said, this is the person who built it. So that actually stuck with me. I said, wow, it's there in Kamatipura and I was not doing it anywhere. I tried to go back, I tried to research more about him, and I really found out that this is a person who actually built BMC building. His name is Rajuji Baduji Kalevar. Okay. Now talking more about Venkuji and Baluji Kalevar. Rajuji Baduji Kalevar is the father of Venkuji Baluji Kalevar, and they both actually, like father and son, they both actually built BMC building together. They used to have a very huge kind of a setup at that time where they started work. They actually belong to Sharir Taluka near Pune, and they started the work from the first Arab bungalow in the Walkeshwar, where they earned 300 rupees per profit. And then they undertook the Bandharwala waterworks. Also, they started with this construction of BMC building in 1884 and ended in 1889. The very interesting part about this thing is when you see the stone, I'm taking you to the back to the picture which actually showed the stone. The estimated section was something around 11 lakh, and they actually built in 11 lakh 19,000. They actually saved a lot of money, and this made British very happy. So what was happening at that time? They were very royal to British, and they actually gave this money all back. So British thought, why not we do something regarding for this thing? Like it's a good gesture, right? If you are like saving a lot of money at that time, 60,000 was not a small amount at that time. So they give this back to the contractor. The contractor, what he does? oh, sorry, the contractor gives all the money back to British. The British in return says ki whatever material you want, you can just take it and you can do whatever you want because it's already like a extra material. So contractor brings back the material to Kamatipura, and with this material, he actually sees what he has made in the iconic building. So he tries to copy it and he tries to make the same kind of a temple back in the Kamatipura. That's why you see all that detail, which is very similar to BMC building, and not exactly the same, but somewhat very relevant. Because when you get stuck with something iconic, you want to create something very similar for your kind of a greater achievement. Going ahead, he also constructed the Whiteway and Lloydlaw building, Army Navy building, along with many mills, including an press mill, James Grieve Mill. He was also a friend of Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. Now, try to understand the timeline here, because Kamatipura was actually a land for many of the people who came from Nizam dominance at that time. They were mostly like a Telugu people who were the laborers here, and British actually planned this area exactly for them. This is one of the initially planned area, and they told this worker that they are very important for development of Bombay, allow them to stay in a very hygienic condition, right? And this is the place where the first, there is no history written about this thing, but it's all there in the book if you keep on searching it. But Google just don't show all this thing. So again, coming back to the Kamatipura area. So yes, this is what the Kamatipura area happens. Now this land, kind of a labor, they are from the very lower class. And again, whenever they face like a problem or something, they will always go to the most influential person. And at that time, all the contractors were very influential person, because even they are helping the British, at the same time British is rewarding them with lot of kind of a material, also with a very important element called as a Rao Bahadur tax or the justice of peace. They can become like a member in the BMC building, they can solve your cases. So they also become very influential in the society where the British are very influential. So they go to British, they tell ki, see, the problem is laborers are this thing. So they becomes like a connection between the British and the laborers. You can also see one of the uh, churches in Grandot area where his name is actually mentioned. They actually stretch up to 40 years in construction. They have also worked with Claude Batley in the later part. So this tab, which is in the Kamatipura, which is in the Grandot area, actually talks more about it. Going ahead, I'm going to talk about in the same area, the Vittal Saina, one of the very influential person. He understood somewhere around in 1880s now architects want to design with a very new kind of a design thing, which is called as the Indo-Saracenic. So he became like, he is the person who was little bit literate. He understood English. He learned English because this was his business. So he actually grasped that thing very easily. He is actually associated with building the CSMVS building, also, various other buildings such as Court of Small Causes, Kolaba Military Quarters, Power Station at Khopoli to provide electricity for mill. He became very rich eventually, and then he went to Thane. He bought lot of land. So very interestingly, he is also associated with building of a Lakshmi Vilas Palace in Baroda. As they were very influential, they used to always travel across. They used to always travel across states, and many people, many times they used to be called so that they can build such kind of a grandeur kind of a building. If you go to Thane, you will see there is a Dutt Mandir, and there his statue is actually installed by his son, which was opened by then Governor Sykes, Frederick Sykes. Now, this was very huge at that time, Governor coming and opening kind of a your statue. Just try to understand how powerful man he was. He was also a leader for 8 years. He opened Vitthal Sayana General Hospital in Thane. The very interesting person, I really love this person, Rao Sahib Nagu Sayaji, the person who actually take a difficult task of making the high rise kind of a towers, including the Rajabai Tower and also the High Court. I will tell you more about it. He is also associated with building or taking a contract of the Secretariat building and also the ports in Bombay, the famous complex, the Bombay High Court. The very interestingly, he 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 was a person which came across like a problem, and then he wanted to take revenge with the people who didn't pay him properly. So what he did, he actually built all this kind of a sculpture, like where the monkey is half blinded with a kind of a tarazu in his hand, which shows how what is happening to the justice system. I always call this building like an animal farm, because whenever you read animal farm, you see all these details. You will also see one of the detail where the owl is, where the owl is actually wearing the bow or the tie of a lawyer, and they are just like wandering around. You can also see one of the sculpture inside, which I don't have a photo right now. I totally missed it. There is a sculpture of a lady, and it is said she is actually the wife of Rao Nagu Sayaji. He correct. So now at that time, making this tall rises building, there used to be a lot of casualty, but he actually took 8 years and he completed all this tall rises. Rao Bahadur Mukund Ramchandra was a senior assistant engineer at that time. He was quite impressed by Nagu Sayaji, and he actually gave him lot of other works also because of his dedication and all. So Jayalingu comes from the Hyderabad in 1835. He is the person who is associated with the Dog Club and also the Dhanraj Palace or the Dhanraj Annexure. He is the person who actually built the Sassoon building at Horniman Circle, designed by Renzin Walton for the famous industrial David Sassoon. Also, he was elected as a public corporator and served for the Baikala division for 12 years. He also worked with the Mahatma Jyotiba Phule in Bombay to spread Satya Shodak Samaj. And then, along with his friend Narayan Meghaji Lokhande, he worked for the mill workers so that they can get 1 day off. So, this is the building which he constructed. You see the photograph here. The top black and white picture is a son of Jayalingu along with Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. And this four, you have Narayan Meghaji Lokande. They actually started with this newspaper, Hedi Bandhu, and then, or might be Deen Bandhu, whatever you want to say. And then they actually strive for this 1 day holiday for all the mill workers or the laborers. And it was accepted all across. And still that thing is like followed right now also. So whenever you go for the Sunday holiday or you plan a walk on Sunday or you enjoy a Sunday weekend, this is the person you should thank to. Going ahead, the very influential person, V.S. Alkonde. Again, V.S. Alkonde is one of the very interesting person who was a chairman on reception committee of the Telugu Munawar Samaj. Now, if you're going to ask me, you are going to say, Miki, what is this Munawar Samaj? Munawar Samaj, like what I said in Kamatipura, there are many people who came from Nizam dominance and they do have their own Samajas. Like there is a Padmashali Samaj, there is Akhil Bharti Samaj, there is Telugu Munawar Samaj. And Telugu Munawar Samaj was very important at that time. So Alkonde was like a president and a chairman of this Samaj from 1928 to 1942. He was so good at the construction. There is one temple inside Kamatipura in the Munawar Samaj which bears a deity something like this. But if you see interestingly, on top of it there is some kind of a insignia. So I'm just zooming into this insignia. So this insignia actually belongs to the palace of Kutch. Now, this again sparked a curiosity in me. What this insignia is doing in the temple in the Kamatipura? Isn't that very amazing? Like so many things are there in Kamatipura and people don't know about it. So I keep on digging about him. I saw his statue also in the same complex. Then I got to know that this person actually designed a Kutch palace in Bombay for Maharana Amar Singh Jhala in 1933 at Bulabai Desai Road under the kind of a mentorship of Claude Betley again. He got rich. Many of the royal family was giving him lot of gift also at that time. Wankaner king actually gave him the car, but he didn't took it. He said, "Ki let it be. I just want to make a temple in my area or in Kamatipura area." That's why the temple was constructed in Munawar Telugu Samaj. And you see the insignia of the Kutch family there. He also built the Bhumaya Pochati Eye Hospital in Kamatipura. And right now, even if you go, I was searching about the person, I always see the scholarship. So he actually started with a scholarship under his name in Victoria Jubilee Technical Institute. And also, he was the person who told Sri Reddy why not to open the first engineering in college in Andhra Pradesh, which is still like the one of the finest engineering college. So he was the person who actually started with this idea of teaching everyone. He was just 10th pass. Again, just to understand ki what was happening. So this was a discriminative pattern at that time. What I feel, whatever I researched about, whatever I know about, I just put up here. There were the senior architects or the architect who were always British, and under him there will be Indian architects, and then there will be a civil engineers, and then there will be agents, contractor, material contractor, labor contractor, which all will be Indian. So apart from the top hierarchy, other than it, no other person will be like kind of a Indian or something. And everybody in below, like the second hierarchical part, will be Indian. and they will all go to the site. They will all check what is happening, what is not happening. But the topmost person might not go to the site. He might come occasionally, or he might just send his drawing. So whenever I see Bombay or the landmarks in Bombay, I always feel it's not the British who actually constructed it, it's the people who actually constructed it. Going ahead, whenever people talk me ki what is the complexities in the business of contractor, I belong to the same field. I do understand this contracting business and civil engineering business very easily. So there are many contractors. It's not only one person who is going to do everything. There will be a civil contractors, mechanical, structure, stone, sculpture, carpenter, demolition contractor, foundation, digging up, water supply, transportation also, like taking away all your debris to some place, dumping it. Then there will be agents who are going to pay you something. It's very interesting to understand what is the complexities of these contractors. Also, people have asked me many times, what is the duration typically it used to take to construct a building in the British Raj? I think it is mostly from 8 to 12 years if the building is very humongous, and if it is done in a very detailed part. But yes, sometimes it can just finish off in 4 years or 5 years also. That was a minimum because it's supposed to be the load bearing structure, and load bearing structure takes lot of time. Going ahead, if you see the thing on the top, it is actually a very interesting timeline which I tried to understand, or I wanted to show it to you. Might be there is a question ki what is there on the top. It's like fluctuating every time. So when you start understanding ki Bombay when it is developing in 1860s till the 1947, there were many things happening. The red part is something in the 19th century, and the gray part is in the 20th century. So you see there is a port development happening, mills happening, central Bombay reclamation happening, Esplanade was open to development, water supply was coming into the picture, railways, the very important part was coming. Then in somewhere around 1900, there was a plague and there was an expansion project, BIT coming into project. Lot many housing, mills were coming. Then in the later part in 1920s, where the modern or art deco, what we say, comes up, there is a PM road, the Ribbon Point reclamation happening, insurance building coming up, railway stations which are coming up. And in this thing, you can actually see the transition of a style from Gothic revival classical, now धीरे changing into a modern, and then धीरे changing into a Art Deco, or what we call as a modern at that time, because Art Deco was something which is formed in 1970s. Now going ahead, I just categorize it ki before 1900, whatever I've understood, most of the contractors were not very educated. They were skilled. There was a very caste kind of a discrimination happening again and again. And then they were very non-dignified. People used to just mistreat them sometimes, traditional method they used to use. But after 1900, there is this kind of a education institute which were coming, JJ School of Art, JJ School of Architecture, which is coming. And now suddenly people were like very trained, they were like getting degrees. Then they were very skilled, dignified, very educated. People are going abroad to get the degrees and then coming back here and then working. So it was quite interesting for me to understand what is happening with the shift of this kind of a generation. Again, not very far from Kamatipura, I just walk across to Brandwood area where there is a Naujivan, and I come across this area called as a Merzban colony, and there is a chawl by his name and a statue. I was again very curious. Nobody knows about this thing. No, he's the one of the very influential guy, the Merzban guy, one of the very senior and most respected person. He was born on 7th of July, 1839 in Bombay. He completed his education in Elphinstone Institute and went to Deccan College in Pune. He started his career with PWD work in Pune cantonment by designing a waterwork. So he was so senior that he constructed approximately 90 building in Bombay. He was awarded the Khan Bahadur tag when there was a Kaisar-e-Hind or the Delhi Darbar of 1877 happening, and the Sanad was conferring on this honor. He actually went and designed much of the greater buildings in Bombay. Design, like it's not engineer's work to design, but an architect's work. But he was so much experienced, now he can design his own building. So to his design, he have many other buildings, including the BJPC building, Parsi Lying Hospital, Roman Catholic Church, Harbour. This is all designed by him. Not only constructed, but also designed by him. He is the person where you can see his name. If you go inside the building, you can see his name every time. Khan Bahadur Mansarji Kovasji Merzban. CIA Freeba. At that time, getting Freeba was like brilliant. Like people are trying to get Reba right now, it is very similar to at that time. But at that time, he got Freeba, which was approximately to another level. He also suggested PWD building. If you're not going to make changes in your structure in General Post Office in Bombay, it is going to come down. And initially, like people didn't hear him. He said, "He Indian architect, Indian engineer, and nobody's going to tell." But then when the Colonel Fuller comes and says the same thing, you please change all your uh, kind of a columns inside this building. Now people are doing it very hurriedly. So he says, "See, it's only because I am like a Indian or not white. You are not listening to me correctly." And yes, he was very important person at that time too. There was a road which is named after him near the Bombay Gymkhana ground. If you walk across somewhere near uh, Tata Institute House or something, there is a lane for him. Going ahead, very next to Grand Road, nearby to Naujivan, you come across this building called as the Palonji building. So it's very beautiful building. If you see the elevation, you have a three kind of a different categories of the detailing. One is a friendship, one is a motherly love, one is a happiness. So they all has been categorized and can be evidently seen in the elevation. This kind of a abstract is also very formative for the Palanji family. Now the very star contractor, Shapurji Palonji, who started, his father actually started this business of Littlewood and Palonji with a merger along with the British in 1865. They used to stay in this house in Grandwood area. Also, the land which was nearby to their house was belonged to them and they actually donated to Parsi Agyari, which we see right now also. They started to come in the limelight with the major projects such as Malabar Hill Reservoir, Stone Pavement, and Chopati. With their dedication and managed to work at the Tansa embankment in 1887, they really got into the limelight. They really become rich now. Going ahead, Shapurji Palanji comes into the picture. He takes all the major kind of a contracting business. He started his office in the Meadow Street in Bombay. They completed Bombay Central Station in 1930s with a specific period of only 21 months. But interestingly, I don't see his name on the tab of a Bombay Central Station. But the archive of Kapurji Palanji, which is like right now very huge kind of a industry, they actually keep on mentioning about him. They are also associated with the making of CCI, the Cricket Club of Bombay, the whole stadium for approximately 3,000 people at that time, which was a mammoth task. Then also they were associated with the Reserve Bank of India in 1939, the Bank of India building in 1944. This is the assurance. Oh, sorry, I'm just missing. This is the assurance building, and then the later part, the Bombay Central Station, which is like now very colored into a Art Deco thing. He's also related to the making of a Dhanraj Mahal, a very interesting building for me. Interestingly, when he grew out of the business, he actually expanded his horizon. He actually invested. He was a visionary. He invested in the newer technologies. And in 1920s to 50s or something, the newer technology was moving images, the talkies, the movies which are coming to picture. And he was very fond of Madhubala and Devanand. He also co-produced these movies. Very interesting. Like I was like very shocked. A contractor becoming so rich, and co-producing this movie. But apart from this, he was actually giving fund and co-producing the other Dilip Kumar movie, which is called as a Ganga Jamuna. So very few people know about these two kind of a tidbits. Going ahead, the Chandra Karmakar. I am not going to stretch more about it, but he's associated with lot of port work. So when you see this building in port, like the port is getting built or something, you see there are people who are in white. They are the British who are wearing that solar cap. But see on the left hand side, there are many Indians who are working there, who never got this kind of a limelight, who never got this kind of appreciation. So many of these older pictures where I keep on looking at see how the things were built, I see lot many contractors somewhere, moving around, or might be many laborers like wearing the Indian tradition headgears or the kurtas or something. Again, the construction of the gates in the port, which was taken up by Karmakar, the mammoth task of making a saturated building again, along with the other contractors such as Vittal Sayana and Jailingu. Coming back to the area of Baikalla, somewhere near the Matunga, you see the Tejukayas. And then I want to talk more about Tejukayas. So Tejukayas are actually the people who started a very small kind of a construction firm. He doesn't have so much of kind of a knowledge or do what to do with things. He started like building a smaller bridges. For example, he started with first thing he started is like a demolition of a Golanji hill in Pare, and then he used the same rubble to reclaim the radio club, to Reti Bandar from the Mumbai port. This is how the embarkment of his journey happens. And then he is given the task of creating this kind of a bridges, the garden bridge. You can still see his name Kejugaya, which is right now thoda rubbed off. People is not taking care of their own kind of a heritage, which is said in the city. But he is associated with making of S bridge. So very interestingly, when you read about his kind of a knowledge or sharing, before redesigning the bridge, he observed the spot for a day and then he proposed a design of a bridge with a matchstick because at that time there was no car, there was bullock cart, and taking a slope for the bullock cart to come at approximately at the height from where the train goes below is very difficult. That's why he have to choose this kind of a design so that bullock cart can come easily. At the same time, the railways can go from below, and this has to be constructed very fast without obstructing the railway timing. So he was the person who took this charge and he constructed it very easily. He was known for his kind of innovative techniques. He also built the wall along the coastline, which was very difficult at that time. The radio club to Surrey. He also made a steps at the Marine Drive, the landfill retaining wall along the coastline of Marine Drive. In the year 1940s, he was honored the title of Rao Sahib and Justice of Peace. He is also connected with the making of the landmarks in Bombay. He is also connected by making the iconic or the more like a functional kind of a building such as the Worli pump house. This is a Worli pump house which is actually made by him. He actually understood that tomorrow there is going to be flood and then we have to remove all that water when the city is going to be flooded. So this is what he comes across. This is whenever you walk, whenever you drive across the Eastern Highway, you see this kind of a building which is very sparky, shining. This actually belongs to Tejukaya. Very interestingly, apart from being a contractor, he used to make like lot of many buildings. But apart from that, he used to own and buy lot many lands. And that is also one of the feature where the contractor is now becoming very powerful. He's becoming Rao Bahadur minister. He's actually occupying the land. And now he understands that if you have a land and there are many people who are coming inside to your city for jobs, for meals and all, you need to make a chawl for them. That's why he started to make a chawl. That's why you see lot many Tejukaya chawl in Matunga area. Something similar which has been done by Goregaonkars also. So Goregaonkars also understood that there is a scope when you have a land, we should actually start making a chawl. That's why you see Goregaonkar chawl at Channi Road, Opera House, also in some other places in South Central Bombay also. Going ahead, his son, Seth Khimji Tejukaya, a very important person, he actually created a landmark of Eros cinema. He was a person who actually said, if you see the Eros cinema, the red color band on the top is not the color or the color plate. It's actually the stone. He's the person who actually come up with that idea. Ki why not we put up the stone on the top? It will make much more better. It will look much more better. It will look totally out of the context where you have all the buildings totally of concrete. So his development includes the Tansa Dam, the prime source of drinking water in Bombay. He's also associated to Athar Road, the oldest and the largest prison in Mumbai. He's also associated with making the Kasturba Hospital. In 1920s, he designed Kusum Vilas Palace, which we see right now in the Kutch. He The challenge was to create the lavish Indian palace with 5 modern amenities with like elevators, richly adorned areas, treatment as the structural column and the elegant dome. Even the street which is in the Matunga is named after him. This is the images of Eros Cinema and Atharod Jail, which is actually clicked from, I think so it's not my image, it's totally Midday's image, I guess. Also the Tensa Dam, very interesting to understand. He was also associated with making of a landmark, which is called as a Gateway of India. Now talking about Gateway of India, I want to highlight one of the major kind of a Rao Bahadur Yashwantra Harishchandra Desai. The chalk which is at Gateway of India is known after this guy. Nobody knows who is the main engineer or who is the person who is actually dealing with the construction of the Gateway of India. People know about George Whitted, people know about the architect, people know what British has done that, what is happening right now, many things. But if you stand at the corner, you will read this name. This is the person who actually constructed Gateway of India. The source for this information is to Sandeep Dahisarkar. He is actually the person who went inside. He actually researched everything. So if you see, these are the construction picture of the Gateway of India. But if you come in area of Bhendi Gali in Nana Chowk, you will see this small Gateway of India, like a small miniature thing. This is a mock-up model. Whenever you want to understand the strength of a material, or whenever you want to understand how this is going to look, you always like we always architect or engineers make a small model of it, like with the same material specifically with all the small jalis. So still, if you go inside the Bhendi Gully, you will see this apartment with his name, Rao Bahadur Desai Cooperating Society. And there inside, if you just take a permission from a watchman, he will allow you to sneak peek into this miniature gateway of India there. Very interestingly, the next person, the lane which is little bit ahead of Gateway of India belongs to Sorab Bharucha. Nobody knows about the Sorab Bharucha. So I tried to find out more about Sorab Bharucha. He was the person who got affiliated with Reba London in 1902. And there is a library in IIA, which is in Bombay, in honor of him. He was a president of IIA for a while. Some of his renowned work includes the Clothia Mansion, Mount Desert in Kambala. He was the first person to understand this modern Art Deco element, and he began to imbibe in his design. All of his buildings are supposed to be like not a very kind of a prime building, but they are very beautiful building. I will show you some images. This is a building at the Leamington Road. The Habib Park is at the Clare Road. He have extensively worked on the Badruddin Tayyibji's house, and and also the Kasara powerhouse, the substation and the VST. Later on, he went to London to get his education, where he achieved this non-British Academy Award. And then somewhere around 1900, there was a plague, okay, which came into Bombay, which allowed, for example, which allowed lot of open land to be used. This is actually building which come in the area near to the metro. So what happens when you see this thing, the yellow line of marine lines, there is a kind of a housemarization done where all the buildings has been removed and things has been planned properly now. So if you look in detail, so this is the area which has been free of land. So what happened at that time? He During that time, the plot were leased out by BIT for long tenure through auctions. In many auctions, architect will build and bid and buy land for the client, further design the structure and get them constructed. So mostly, if you see architect from 1930s to 1960s, they will always write ahead surveyors also, because at that time it was very essential to make a building. Without a surveyor, it's not going to happen. So you have to make architect and surveyors. So an architect by profession was employed to design and supervised by the contractor under the same name. But the surveyor's sign is really going to be important. An architect is the person who can do both the sign, surveyor sign also and also the architect sign. This monopoly is understood by few of the architects at that time, and they began to reuse this again and again. So now how he started is like a architect, became like a contractor, and now he's into the surveying and leveling field. The whole process is very well documented by Kamo Iyer in his book, which I found very interesting how the whole process is happening. So along with Firoz this monopoly of how the architect and surveyors are going to work, he built several buildings, Tirbai Mansion, Maskati Mansion, and also very good kind of a buildings in Aglipada, Baikal. So what is going to happen next time? I don't have too much of time, but I do understand my limitation and constant. I don't want to bore people with all my too much of knowledge. But there are many other kind of contractors and engineers and architects which you can see on our page, including Baguji Ki, Goregaonkar, Mukunchand, Ramakrishna, Modak. So they are very interesting to understand. Again, we actually got published. The three of us is there in the corner. This is what we tried to do, and somebody actually took notice of it, took an interview. Somewhere it is getting recognized. The future way we are doing a research. There are more 21 architects in our or the contractors in our hand right now. We are trying to collaborate people. We are trying to also see if we can do a walk or something so that people are very much more aware if they're regarding their contribution towards the city. Tomorrow in the future, if you're going to ask me, I might go around by making a book. But also the whole intention was to get a permanent place for them. Like I don't know, might be a smaller place in the museum itself, just to highlight their contribution towards the icon. So yeah, this is from my side. You can actually scan this whole image. You can come across our page. You can ask questions. I will always there to reply you. But again, thank you Khaki Lab for everything. Thank you my whole team who actually seen this thing. I hope I was not very boring and try to make it very simple as far as possible. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Esa. Lots of questions coming in.
Yeah.
So let me take them in order the way they've come in. So Sakshan Dangi asks, what was the contribution of people like King Bhimdev III and Shilahara kings towards Mumbai unknown?
So thing is that my whole intention was to document something in British Raj, from where I can understand where things are written about it. Now I've not went to that past. I might seek in, but I don't think so. There is lot of things which are documented at that time.
Yep. Question from Parag Godse: where did these Indian architects get trained or educated? Were they engineers turned architects? And he states the reason could have been JJ School of Architecture started in 1913. That's the reason
So
he's asking the question.
correct. That's a very interesting question, which actually tweaked me also for a while. See, initially, there were people like British, mostly were from the army, like a colonels and all. They used to come here and they used to design buildings for us. Okay, the people who used to be under them, like lot many Indians, they used to be under them. They were not very kind of a trained people, but they know little bit of construction here and there. So they together started to make buildings. Okay, then little by little, as the time goes on, people got educated, people got aware about the condition, they got aware about the monopoly and all. They then it at some time British also realized that it's not going to happen with us alone. We have to uh, sorry, we have to start training people, and hence JJ School of Art, JJ School of Architecture comes into the picture, where people are getting trained and people are also getting degrees now. So that is how the whole structure thing happens with the contractor or the architects in Bombay specifically.
Okay.
Then there were
Uh,
again like MSU was there. Means there were many other institutes coming around India also, which allowed or which trained people to become architect or civil engineers.
okay.
Hmm.
Couple of comments here. Sarah Marin says, congratulations to your team. This is wonderful and a very important piece of work that has the potential to change the whole
Thank
understanding of
you.
architecture history.
Thank you.
Daniel says, good talk. Thanks for sharing. Kirti Savantu says, great talk, good research. Thanks for the talk. Bharat asked the question, what was the newspaper in which your article was printed?
Oh, thank you, Bharat. It was a midday's article. We got like a highlight on Sunday. Sundays usually everybody want to be on Sundays midday. So we got published there. Then I actually wrote or actually helped with many other small authors to get into this thing. Many places we got published also. It's all there on our Instagram page. I don't remember too much, but yes, we have been like documenting all of them. What is our kind of a journey, how we are contributing towards other things.
Okay.
Yes.
Next, he had a question which I think got covered by Parag Godse, where do they all learn architecture? Um, Yash Nancy asked a question, these are contractors. Would they have hired architects?
These are contractors. So if you see my presentation, I have actually color coded. The brown one were the contractors, the blue one was architect and the engineers, and the purple one was the engineers. Sorry. So this is how the whole process goes. So whenever even you come on our Instagram page, you will see this color code hierarchy which is happening.
Right. Vinod Agarwal asked a question, actually two questions from him. One is, who paid for some of the important buildings, the English or the Indians, local rulers, etc., or the government of India?
Okay. And the second.
And the second question was, in the period of construction, what would it have cost? All buildings designed by English architects slash structure engineers, or were any Indians involved?
So to answer the very first question, most of the building what you see in Bombay, specifically like the kind of a Indo-Saracenic or something, they are mostly paid by the Indians or the Parsis. So whenever you see, or might be like a merger between the two, but mostly they have a bigger role in paying or the funding of these projects. Like you have a Ready Money, you have a JJ, you have so many other people who are actually coming ahead and doing something for the city, because there was a boom in trade. Like there was a boom in opium, there was a boom in trade with the cotton, then there was mills, and many things were happening, and they wanted to give back something to the city. So you will always see their names coming and getting highlighted openly. Then there was uh, Nana Shankar Seth, many other people who came and made this kind of iconic structures. And the second question was,
In the period of construction, what did it cost?
so when I tried to understand, it was something around 11 lakh rupees, 12 lakh rupees to construct a BMC building. but it was very huge amount that time. I don't know what it will be like approximately to today's time. But yes, by just by saving something around 60,000 rupees at that time, or something around the 60 crore might be at that time. That is my kind of a understanding. I don't know exactly what how you can try to merge or try to stable it out. Hmm.
Okay. Uh, Kirtida Unwala asks whether you know who the contractor for Afghan church might have been.
So I have come across one name, but I actually refused because he was not Indian. So I just flip. I know Kirtida ma'am is actually working on the restoration of Afghan church. It will be beneficial for me to find something more on it. But yes, yes, I will try to get back on it. I will try to find more. I came across one specific book on Afghan church. I will try to share that book with you, ma'am.
So Saili basically says, great talk, Isa, very interesting. Um, Tejashri Karande says, thank you, Isa, for sharing all the knowledge and research you've done over the years. It's always a pleasure to listen to you talk about this city.
Thank you.
Question from Sarah, two questions. First one is, to what extent were these contractors dependent on Public
Public
Works
work
Department
department.
work? Sorry.
Mhm.
What was the share of private works in their in their repertoire basically, and did it come at the beginning or the end of their careers? And the second question is, did the chawls built by the contractors accommodate their own construction laborers? Any idea where they employed their laborers directly on daily wages or worked with subcontractors, etc.?
See, so when I was reading about the kind of involvement. But I will answer the second question first. The
Yeah.
chores and all. So there was like influx of lot many laborers coming inside the city. Might be for mills, might be for port development, might be for. And if you ask anyone at that time, ki, what are you working in? They might be working in government office, or they might be working in port, or they might be having their own business. But the laborers, like they were actually mostly into this kind of a developing of Bombay. So whenever the contractor, for example, the Tejukas or Goregaokas, they become influential, they become powerful, they become rich, and they have a lot of money to buy land all across the area, or across the city. And they know that tomorrow this land is going to be very valuable. So they started making this chawl. So I came across the family person of the Tejuka who themselves say, even with the Goregaokar, where they have a short history written, I read that thing, where it is written that now the business has to keep on going, and we cannot depend on one kind of income. We have to divide it. So like making a chawl, renting it out becomes like a second kind of a income for them. So
So
they were
they were actually kind of the first real estate developers, maybe. I mean,
correct. Kind of, yes, yes, totally.
fascinating.
So yep. So yes, and also the people who are staying inside were also the labor. Like you are making some house and you are actually telling them only to stay. Like they might be working in mill, they might be a better paid labor. And secondly, you 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 have to do a very kind of a less maintenance to it. You have a common toilet, you have a small kind of a room, and then you have a bigger passage where the more activity happen, a bigger kind of a land below where you can celebrate things and all. So it is kind of a revenue generating business. So most of the contractors, when they become powerful, they actually work towards their many. For example, I saw the Sochpal also, they have a chawl. The Jaya Lingu do have a chawl. Teju Kayas do have a chawl. Goregaokas have a chawl. Then I came across various chawl all across the Mumbai with these contractors coming into the place. So I will just give me 1 minute. I will just eat it. It's actually my fast. I just have to eat. Sorry. Yeah. Please go.
Uh, the first question I'll go back to, which
Hmm.
Sarah had asked, to what extent were these contractors dependent on the Public Works Department work, and what was the share of private works in their sort of portfolio? Did it come at the beginning or the end of their careers?
So whenever I read about PWD books and all, I came across this kind of a tabular, or the table which actually mentions ki who was the contractor and how much they are getting paid, but not about the detail.
Mm.
So by that thing, I think so. What I understood ki they PWD people also know these contractors are very important. They trust them. Also at the same time, they want to keep a table key where is the money going, how much it is going, when it is going to come back, what is the work which is going to be completed in the next 5 years. Because PWD is not only, or the BIT is not only making the building, they're also developing the urban areas. So they keep on having this kind of a tables or something along with the name of a people whom they are paying money. but with a very kind of a loose kind of a documentation. See, I always see British as a very good kind of a surveyor levels, architects, and also good managers, and also very good at keeping books, or might be keeping the tables very correctly. But here I see some kind of a flaws, and then I understood see, they used to actually trust lot many kind of a contractors at that time. Yes, so it's always like a depending on each other. It's like always keeping faith in each other and going ahead with, because both of them know, PWD knows the contractors are very important. Contractors also know that we are not so rich that we can construct our own landmarks. So we have to depend on PWD. Yes, this is the relationship they used to have at that time. Yes.
Okay. So Karen says, wonderful, thank you. As a Shefali, thank you for a very interesting talk. Minaz Ansari had a question. Isa, can you tell us a little bit about your process of uncovering these stories? What were the primary sources of information and the methodology used?
Correct. So Minaz ma'am is actually my faculty and mentor from my architecture days. So we are always in this talk again and again ki how to document Bombay, what is the way of method, or we keep on having this thing. It's a very interesting question. So the very first kind of answer to this question is like ki just go around in the city, keep on walking. Whatever you see as a small detail, keep on observing, making a note of it. Tomorrow it might not be there. It will be just vanished or it might be demolished. But when you keep on making a note, you're actually creating this kind of a pointer. And one day, when you read a book or you come across the older book or you come across the newspaper, then there is some line which keeps on connecting these dots or the points. So this is how the whole method arises. For me also, I just started with putting up the points here and there. And when I keep on reading about it, when I keep on listening to lectures, when I keep on attending lectures, like I'm always into this kind of a heritage enthusiasm. So this all points keeps on joining again into each other. Then I thought ki only I know about it. I really need to document it well. I need to tell it to people. Ki, see, this is what is happening in the Bombay or what has happened in the Bombay. So the whole method was to first explore the city, start making a point or a connect, and then start connecting all the dots together. Yes, ma'am. I hope I have answered your questions correctly and thoroughly.
So Parag Godse had another question. Can you please answer my question? If you know, in pre-1913, where did Indian architects get educated in architecture? I think you might have referenced this earlier, but he's asking a question now. Then.
Correct, correct, correct. So in 1930s, now there is a JJ School of Architecture which came into Bombay. Then there you have MSU Baroda, which is one of the biggest institutions at that time. Then people are also traveling at that time. I told you ki people went to London to get their education degree. Barucha came back from London, he got the Reebok, Reebok, and many other things. So this is what is happening. They are getting educated. Like, yeah, this is what I still know. But if I get something more on it, I'm just writing the points down so that I can come back and I can give like a more clarity on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Raza Masudi asked the question. That was a great talk. Thanks, Isa. Was there any association of stone workers, woodworkers, sculptors, etc.?
So when I was reading Kamu Ayer's book, he actually mentions he with the invention of this new material, of the coming of a new material called as a concrete, many things got changed. For example, the workers, the laborers, the mason and the carpenter who used to design beautiful balcony. If you see Bombay, the Ambala, there you see buildings with wooden balcony. And now everything is getting changed. Initially, the wooden balcony will have only kind of a roof or something on top of it. But now the balcony is getting into shapes. Like if you see all the Art Deco building, they have a inverted arch balcony, they have a circular balcony, they have a chamfered balcony. So this is what the change was happening just because the concrete came into the picture. I do understand there is not much more written in detail about the carpenters and all, but yes, there were many kind of a carpenter who means the carpenter who become rich and became a contractor. For example, Goregaonkars, they were the carpenters initially. They started designing the police chowki of at that time. Then they designed the benches and everything for the railway platform. And dhire dhire they became rich and they became to have this kind of a bigger kind of a setup with two, three more people. So yes, the many things like carpenter is now becoming like a contractor with his kind of a intellectual.
Yeah. So Krunal Pancholi has a question that actually I wanted to ask as well. how are all these buildings being maintained now? And do we have labor who understand kind of the old detail and how to maintain and repair old buildings like these?
So Kunal is also as previous senior from the batch. I hope he's good. So in today's time, all this kind of a structure because of many things like a rent control act, because of DCR which is very newly done, there is kind of a umbrella which is set up where person cannot. It becomes like a totally unsustainable for him to repair this building. So what he does, the best thing is he will go and he will demolish the building, and he will tell some kind of a developer or a builder to come in and rebuild it. Government, when there is actually a heritage committee set up still in the BMC, they try to do something out of it, but there is always a protest from the other side. He, how we are going to how we are going to maintain it. And if you see the history book and all, there is a whole complex situation with the rent control act coming into the picture, Bombay Repair Act, then how it converted into Mahara, then why landlord is not paying for the repair. So it will actually take me like one whole hour to explain it. But current condition is like is the same key. A smaller building cannot be maintained or repaired, but the landmarks can be done with the various kind of a CSS scheme or something, like a social service scheme where a government or where a private party comes in and he, or just to save a tax, they can actually save the building or something. Or the bank building can take up their kind of a projects.
Isa, I had a question. Were there any sort of, or could you tell us what are some of the most significant challenges that the building contractors face during the construction of these buildings? Anything specific to the
Yes,
era in
yes,
which they
yes.
were built?
Specifically, yes. So when I was researching more about these buildings and the construction patterns, I realized the biggest challenge was to build something which is very tall. So if I tell you in a very detailed architectural language, most of these buildings are load-bearing buildings and they are quite heavy. And when you go up and up, you have to make your columns less kind of a heavy. You have to offset it, you have to merge it, like become it need to become very small. So a building like Rajabeta, which is so detailed, and when you go more on the top, it becomes quite heavier because there is so much of sculpture. And then there is no proper trained people who will go up so much. And then there is always like a wind kind of a velocity, the kind of a there is always a trouble up there, like to work at that height. That it was like totally like a brilliant kind of a skill or something like Jayalingo used to have or Nagu Sayaji used to have, because they constructed this building and at that time lot many people used to die. I've always come across construction of this building happening, but also at the same time 15 to 20 people are dying. I might either might be like falling from somewhere, or either might be something falling on them, or either they are like stepping on something very differently, and there is a police case which is fired and all. But building a Bombay High Court and building a Rajabheda, there was no casualty at that time because they become experienced now ki how to deal with the kind of a taller construction now. So yes, that was a challenge which I thought it should be like highlighted somewhere.
Actually, Bharat has just made a comment that would be relevant in that sense. He says, recently I came across a reference that the columns in the town hall were to be in two rows, but during actual construction, one row is discarded, and these surplus columns are used in Baikala Church. Baikala
Correct.
Club photographs show these columns. So,
Yes, there is a church in Baikalla which do have a similar column. This is actually told to me by Vikas sir also once on his walk. There was an extra column which was designed for the town hall, which was bought here in Baikalla church during the same time, and they put it up here. But my concern was that this column is actually very statically, like they actually do it very design approach based. They have to make sure that the gable on the top need to stand on it. So if you want to remove some column without just calculating, you cannot do it. You have to first understand how the building is going to stand, what is the gable it is going to stand, how the gable is going to take load, and then suddenly like deleting some of the column might not work. So this might be a very kind of a aware kind of a decision which they would have taken to remove some column which are extras and use it somewhere.
okay. Adil Desai had a question. Any records of the public water tanks being filled up by contractors?
Yes, I have come across few of them, but I have not dig into too much because it was a very different type of a contractor. They used to deal with a cutting of what we say the cutting of the mountains. Like I came across a PWD report which talks about cutting down of a Dongri hill. And then I shared with Vinayak also, he see, I know the contractor who cut down the hill and he actually placed all the rubber materials somewhere else. Might be in the port or might be in the tank or somewhere. So yes, they were a very different type of a contractor. They were doing the civil work, but not making a landmark or constructing something.
Okay. Siddesh asked the question, do you have any information about Bagoji Care?
Yes. So very interestingly, Malika Keer, the lady who handles the Instagram page Beyond Heritage, she is the descendant from the Bagoji Keer family. And Bagoji Keer is one of the contractor who became rich. He supported lot many kind of a struggle at that time. There is a chawl in Mahil which is named after him. There is also a land which was given by him to the cemetery. Also, he was, as Malika says, he was attached to the construction of Baikalla station.
So Rishabh basically says, thanks for a wonderful talk, Isa. Look forward to roaming around and continuing documenting the city together someday very soon. There was a question here on when are you going to start your walks from Divya?
So Divya is I think so the person who is in my team. We are actually keep on doing this thing and we keep on taunting each other. We should do something. We should do something. Let's see if Divya, if you are free, please go ahead and take it up. Mind, because we have all our other priorities at teaching college, then other documenting things and other things which I work on, then also the designing. Divya herself is like working with architects. She also doesn't have so much of time. Then the Dia Mary Joseph also, she is doing thesis right now. I don't want to disturb her in the middle of her thesis. So yes, we will plan something very soon.
Great. Last couple of questions here. Praveen asked the
Yes.
question, was there any evidence of the involvement of the underworld at that time since so much money was involved?
I don't think so. Underwood came at that time. It came somewhere around in 1980s, 1990s. But there are many cases which are not about corruptions. There was a corruption case during the reclamation of Nariman Point. There was a corruption case which I came across during the Dangri Hill itself. And there were so many other corruption cases which was happening because of the black money again. But also it was very interesting to make a very different PPT for them. So I will totally work for it and just try to understand how the corruption and the contractor works someday.
Great. Okay, Isa, I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you for a very enlightening talk. And thanks to everyone else for dialing in. Look forward to seeing all of you back here in 2 weeks' time. Thanks and have a
Thank
good
you.
evening and a good weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.